The next team that has been eliminated, the Washington Wizards. The Washington Wizards just need talent. Like this summer is just like all about like acquiring talent for me for the Wizards, right? Like they just need more assets essentially to be able to go out and like find like real core pieces. Like Bilal Coulibaly and Denny Avdia to me are their two long-term core players that I think you can look at. And like Denny's growth this year has really pushed them, in my opinion, into a space where like I'm comfortable considering him a a core piece, right? Like something of a core piece, at least. We'll see what it looks like long term, but I think Denny has been good enough to where it's fine to throw him in there. Bilal has been a really interesting rookie. I did not expect as much from him as he's given them this season, but he has given them quite a bit this year that has been good. They have other guys like Kyle Kuzma who could be on that roster for a while or could not be on that roster for a while. It just depends on how they want to go about things, right? Corey Kispert, like he's extension eligible this year. They need to make a decision on Corey Kispert this summer in all likelihood so that they don't like lose the asset in some way, shape, or form. They have all these younger kids like Johnny Davis, Vukcevic, Patrick Baldwin, guys that I think at this point we just don't really consider pieces that are important to their long-term growth necessarily. But they also have 3 draft picks. They have what is currently projected as the number 1 overall pick. They have a 14% chance to get it, but they are the worst team in the league right now. They acquired a first-round pick from the Clippers, basically. I think it's the Clippers pick right now, but like it's like a weird kind of deal where it's like kind of slithers around. Yeah. And then they have number 50 in this class as well. They don't have their early second round pick this year. So they're going to be able to bring in 2 guys that like could really help be a piece of their core long term. This is just kind of simple to me. They have like $22 million in cap space. I think they're probably going to be pretty bad next year. I think that they just need to really focus on continuing to fill out their young talent and finding guys who can be a piece of the core, because unlike the Spurs with, you know, Victor Wembanyama and Devin Vassell, and like frankly even like Sohan to me is on the level of like Coulibaly and Avdia as a prospect long term. It's easier for them to figure out a pathway because they have the guy. They have Victor. The Wizards don't have the guy yet. Like Bilal, maybe like if you squint, you can see a world where he can be that. I don't. I think he's probably going to be more of like a 3-and-D wing more than anything. Denny is, you know, a good starting quality player, but probably not a, you know, super high end potential star. They need to find like not just the number 1 option, but the number 2 option, and potentially even the number 3 option on their team moving forward. And that's a hard place to be, especially when the 2024 draft does not feature as much star upside as what, you know, hopefully Wizards fans would have liked.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what's hard. If they don't get Alex Sarr, you know, whether that's they get the number 1 pick and get to choose him, or let's say they fall to 3 and, you know, I don't think it's a lock at all that Alex Sarr is the number 1 pick. Like, I don't think that's a thing at all. You know, is there a world where Alex Sarr could fall to number 3? Sure. But if he doesn't, then where do you go? Do you take a stabilizing player, you know, right? Like, do you take Reed Shepherd just to come in like, hey, at least this guy's going to space the floor? But, you know, is that where you go? Is it Matas, you know, take a swing on him? Is it Ron Holland? You know, I think that's who I took for them in our mock a month or so ago, just because I said, like, you know what, I'm just going to swing for the fences on this one. And maybe this guy can be a number 2 option or something like that. Here's what I will say. They better figure out like a vet point guard situation, because Tyus Jones is a free agent, unrestricted free agent this summer. I don't think you can go into next season with all of these wings. Like, I like Coulibaly. I like Denny Avdia. I like Corey Kispert, like not as a starter, but as like a wing off the bench. I think he's good. Kuzma, like they've been playing essentially like all of these guys in the starting lineup together. But you got to have a point guard, no matter who you end up taking, whether it's Matas, whether it's Ron Holland, Alex Sarr, whoever it is. They better have a plan to bring in somebody that can orchestrate the offense. We just spent how long talking about how valuable Fred VanVleet, and I'm not saying that you want to spend that type of money, but you better have a point guard that can run the show. Even if you took a Reed Shepard or a Nikola Topic, like you can't rely on a rookie point guard to come in and run things for this team. So I hope they find some way to replace that, because they need some veteran ball handling to kind of keep all of this young talent organized.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like if I was them, I'm probably just trying to sign Tyus Jones again.
I agree.
Just given what the free agency class of point guards looks like, I think that you really truly just kind of have to go with Tyus. And if you're Tyus Jones, you're probably okay with getting like real money to be the Wizards point guard. Like, could you do a 3-year, $50 million deal for Tyus Jones where the final year is a team option? Like something like that. Basically have him around for 2 years where it's like real money, right? That makes sense to me in some way. I will also say this is definitely a team that I'm looking at with Josh Giddey.
Okay.
The reason I say that is because Will Dawkins, their general manager, was in the Oklahoma City front office, was, a huge part of their scouting and development team when Josh Giddey was drafted by Oklahoma City. And if Oklahoma City decides to move on Giddey, I wonder if the Wizards, a team that needs, a point guard of the future, needs somebody that can come in and, organize things, can be like a super high level orchestrator of the offense. I do think Giddey is a really interesting name for them to take. This would honestly kind of be the team I look at for this.
I mean, that would be fat. Like they would just start essentially a bunch of guys that, the same, like you'd start Giddey. I mean, I don't think Koulibaly at the 2, but like maybe they do Koulibaly, Avia, Kuzma, and then you draft Alex Sarr, and I guess you kind of figure it out and go from there. So, yeah, that would be interesting, but they got to figure out that spot. No matter who they draft, no matter how the things go, like you can't put the ball in any of these other guys' hands and say orchestrate things. You got to have somebody to do it.
And again, the Wizards have this late first round pick this year.
Yeah.
Like that's not crazy off in terms of the value for Giddey, in my opinion, given that you're going to have to pay Giddey like moving forward here and extend him. That number 26 pick and like maybe something small like beyond that. That's an interesting one. Also, like, I don't know what they're going to do with Corey Kispert. I would probably want to keep Corey Kispert if I was them. Where are you at on Corey Kispert as an extension candidate? And do you think that this is the team that should be paying Corey Kispert to stick around?
I don't think they have to be, just because of all of these guys we've talked about with Denny and Koulibaly specifically. So I wouldn't go crazy with the number that I would pay him. I like Kispert. I think he's an interesting scorer overall. A lot of times I come away from games a little bit impressed that he's not just a 3-point shooter, that he can put the ball on the deck a little bit. He'll operate a ball screen, put a defender in jail, and hit a 12-foot floater, So I think he can do those, but all of that interests me more off the bench, Sam, not as a starting, bucket getter, but bucket getter's too far, but not as a guy that's in the starting lineup getting points, but as a guy coming off the bench. This year he's averaging 12.5 points on 48, 37, 76 from the free throw line. So I'm interested in Kispert. I would love to bring Kispert back if I was the Wizards, but I wouldn't pay him starter level money, not whenever I already have Koulibaly on his rookie deal, Denny on this new extension that's had a really good year. I wouldn't give him that type of money. But something, Dirty Dancer says 13 million. So, the non-tax MLE, something a little more in that range is something I would be more comfortable with.
Yeah. Kispert to me is probably like a $15 million a year guy, just in terms of like young floor spacers who hit 38 to 42% from 3, like especially when you can do a little bit more off the bounce than that and you're an efficient decision maker, those guys do tend to get paid in a real way. I look, if they could do 4 years, 60 million on Kispert, I'd probably do that if I'm being honest. Like I think that that's a reasonable number for them to pay, and I don't think he then loses trade value if you do that.
Okay, so that's it. Like then they'd have quite a few guys in that range where if the time came
Right.
to make a deal, you have some guys. Denny would be in that similar range. He's actually on a contract that's decreasing. You put Kisper on that contract, and you just have some guys in that range where you can put that money together to go make a trade if that came about over the next year, 2, 3 years.
Yeah, and look, like if they want to get super flexible in terms of the money on their books, they can do that in a hurry, right? Like the Kyle Kuzma deal, you
Yeah,
can easily move that for draft picks and like an expiring $20 million deal.
yeah,
Very, very easily in the summer if you want to. Marvin Bagley expires after this year. Rashawn Holmes' deal expires after this year. Landry Shamet, they have a non-guarantee on for this year and then a team option the next year. So like even if they want to keep Shamet, like his deal is not guaranteed the following year. So really the only like money on this team that is big and an issue is Jordan Poole.
yeah.
They're going to be able to like get flexible in a hurry if they really want to, is I guess what I would say.
Yeah, no, I agree. And so, like I said, I mean, Kispert's shooting like 66% on twos this year, and it's not crazy volume, right? Only 3.5 a game. But again, I think
He
I
picks his
watch.
spots well.
Yes, he's a little bit more than just a floor spacer. He can attack a closeout. He can operate a ball screen here and there. So whatever the going rate for a solid scorer off the bench that spaces the floor, that's what I would pay him as. If he wanted more, like if he and his camp think he's a starting level, wing, then that makes it a little bit tougher of a decision if that's how he wants to get paid.
Yeah. Uh, yeah. I mean, this is just a team that needs talent.
Yeah,
That's not really another way to phrase it. Like if I was them, I would be looking kind of at the 2020 and 2021 NBA drafts, guys that will be restricted free agents this summer, Patrick Williams, Isaac Okoro, guys in that vein that are, really, really interesting, good players in some respect or another. And then the 2021 draft, like the pre-agency guys, right? With honestly, like Jalen Green. I probably wouldn't want to do Jalen Green if I was them, but Jalen Green is a name that like, the Rockets may have to make a decision on this year. Uh, Moses Moody with the Warriors, like could the Warriors decide to make a move early on him in order to get somebody to help their aging core now kind of thing. Just basically trying to look at what's available. Like, I don't think Trey Murphy will come available. I don't think Jalen Johnson will come available. I think there are names that could come available though. And I would be targeting those kind of players if I was Washington right now, in addition to using whatever pick capital I can and getting to the point where, I hopefully have some upside pieces that can be number 1, number 2, and number 3 options on a real playoff caliber NBA team.
They also have to figure out some sort of center. Like they have to find somebody to play that position. Like I know Marvin Bagley went
Yeah.
there and kind of tore things up early on, and but like he's not a starting NBA 5 man. And so I'm not saying you have to like go spend a bunch of money, but if you don't land Alex Sarr or somebody like that in the draft, maybe you get somebody at 26 and you start a rookie there. I think there'll be some intriguing ones at 26 actually, but veteran point guard obviously more important. Overall, like just talent, yes, but you got to have some sort of center, maybe some rim protection there at some point, whether it's a veteran signing or you get somebody with one of those picks in the draft.
Yeah, and that's a good way to transition into the like Wizards draft ideas here, right? Like we both, I think, would probably have Alex Sarr at number 1 for them, right?
I would 100%. Yep.
Like he just makes a lot of sense for this organization. They need like a long-term defensive anchor and somebody that like has real upside, I think, offensively long-term. Look, I don't love like taking a center, especially one that I think is like a bit questionable offensively at number 1, but I do think that there is at least value in taking him in a year where there just isn't a lot of upside around the board, really.
Yeah, I mean, like you can take Risachet, and again, like it's not like you can't move any of these guys, but the thing with the wing position is where are the minutes coming from? And again, I realize like, okay, let's just trade Kuzma. That's a very tradable contract, or don't, move on from Kispert or something like that. Even Cody Williams, like, yes, like he makes sense, but it seems like you have I realize you can move on from guys. I would rather just like, hey, Alex Sarr. Now, if you told me they end up with Cody Williams, that's fine, or Risachet or whatever. I just kind of look at their roster. I like some of these guys in Koulibaly, Advia, like we've talked about. Sarr makes sense to me. Like that's the one that makes sense. Like this is a team where I think he really, really makes sense.
Yeah, and the other piece of it that is interesting on their front as well is, Will Dawkins. We mentioned as a connection with Giddey. Will Dawkins was a piece of the front office that, to connect it to the first segment on the show, drafted Jalen Williams. Right, so Cody Williams is in this class. I wonder if there's like something of a connection there with that family in general. Modest Bazelis, Nikola Topic, Reed Shepard, like they just need everything across the board right now. There isn't a position they couldn't use. This is full scale, best player available to me. Whoever you evaluate as the best player and has the highest upside, I think you just take a swing on it.
Yep, I agree.
Okay, the last point here is Jordan Poole. Look, I would not want Jordan Poole on my roster if I was a team at this point. I mean, like, would you be willing to attach any of these picks to get off of Jordan Poole's 3 years and 95 million left on his deal?
I mean, maybe if I didn't, I don't know. It's going to take a lot to get out. Like nobody's going to want that. And there's so much linked on it. I feel like in general, we see these ones that have multiple years. We see teams just having to keep those guys around, and then you move them later on. I think I would just bring him back on the roster next year and figure it out from there. I don't know that I would want to give up one of these first round picks to do it.
I agree.
Because what are you going to do? What are you going to do with the cap space, right? Like, unless you have some.
Yeah.
I mean, he's toxic. Dustin says he's toxic, in my opinion. Like, yeah, if he's absolutely crushing your locker room and the culture and everything, like, I don't have enough of a pulse on the Wizards locker room to know that and speak that in fact. So I'm not going to say that. If you told me that was true, then I could buy into it a little bit more. So, yeah, like I understand the arguments for it. I would just sit on that contract for at least one more year. I would make both of these selections.
I agree with you. I would sit on this contract and continue to have him on the roster. And like, if you have to send him home, like you send him home, I guess. But I don't think we're at that point yet necessarily either. I think that this is a team that just needs talent. You take the best players that you can. You try to find marginal inefficiencies in the trade market where you can. Take guys that you evaluate to be interesting, high upside swings, and go from there.